Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel M Stuart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to learn how to paint a tropical beach. I'm going to teach you how to blend easy skies and water as an underpainting, and then how to add things like clouds over the top. So we're going to learn how to paint realistic clouds, and then we're going to learn how to paint a palm tree. So we're going to teach you how to add shadow and texture to a lovely palm trees and its leaves, how to paint waves in your lovely tropical water so you can paint this gorgeous tropical beach acrylic painting. So let's get into it. So you're going to need the following colours today. They are titanium white, cad yellow, cad orange, turquoise, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, iris purple, chromium oxide green, burnt umber and matte black. Now I've got a burnt sienna paint canvas that I've drawn an outline. We're going to have a big palm tree here in the foreground. We're going to have some clouds and a lovely tropical ocean in the background. We're going to have some deep water, and we're going to have some a wave, and we're going to have shallow water, and we're going to bring the wave and all the sort of sea foam. So I'm going to teach you how to paint sea foam. We're going to have some wet damp sand, and we're going to have some dry sand. So we're going to cover all this in today's tutorial. So I'm going to just get some cobalt blue, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast forward the video just while I block in just our palm tree and the waves, just so I know where we're going to put our shadows, and I'll put the video back to normal speed. So if you would like to pause the video, if you want to jot down the outline, feel free to, and away we go. So we always start from the back, and we always create the sky first, and then we work our way towards the viewer. So we're going to create cerulean blue, a dot of cobalt blue, and lots of white, and we're going to just create this lovely pastel blue. So cerulean blue, a little bit of cobalt blue, but predominantly white, and you should get this lovely pastel blue. And all we're going to do is block in our painting with a big brush, and we're just going to paint a lovely light colour on the horizon. Now don't worry if you go over your tree or if you make your work scruffy. We're going to neaten it all up as we go along. We just want to gauge all the right colours to create this lovely sort of tropical beach here. So we're going to get darker in colour, and we're going to add more blues the more we go up. So we're going to add more cerulean and cobalt blue to create a royal blue. So cerulean blue and cobalt blue together makes royal blue. And we're just going to add less white this time. So it's got plenty of blues in it, and we've just added a little bit less white. Still got plenty of white, but just not as much as the previous colour. So you can see the previous colour to the right. So we've just got a slightly darker blue, still very pastel, and we're just going to get a bit darker as we move up into the sky. Now excuse if my easel is a little bit wonky. For some reason she is a little bit wonky, but I love her and I don't want to get rid of her, unfortunately, because I paint on her all the time. So you're not all drunk at home. My easel is a little bit wonky, so the camera is just a little bit crooked. So look, all we're doing, we're just going up, getting darker as we move up. And as I say, don't worry if you go over your tree. We can block all that back in later. It's just using that cobalt blue to have a rough outline of where I want it to be. So look, all we're doing, we're just gradually getting darker as we go up. It's a really easy trick. So just blend the tones together gently. And then again, we're just going to add more of the two blues, more of the cerulean, more of the cobalt blue. We're not going to add any more white now. It's still got some white in our mix. And all we're going to do, look, we're just going to create our X shapes and just blend this third tone into the lighter shades. So really try to work on your blending. You can use a blender brush, or you can just use a large soft bristle brush. That's what I use. I don't use any expensive brushes. A lot of people ask me. I just use really cheap brushes, but they're really large and they've got a nice round head, and they're very soft to the touch. So if you haven't got a blender brush, you can buy even a makeup brush. So something like how a lady puts on blusher or something. We have these really soft bristled brushes. They are perfect for blending acrylics, and they only cost $1 or £1. So there we go, we're creating our X shapes, gradually blending it. And then last but not least, we're not going to add any white now, and we're just going to create a royal blue colour. So just cerulean blue and cobalt blue, no white. And we're just going to use that right in the top corners of our painting to frame the painting. So we're going to try to create this really bright tropical sky. So royal blue, if you add a little bit more cerulean blue is more turquoise than cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is more cooler in colour. So if you add a little bit more cerulean blue, but still a little bit of cobalt blue, you get this brilliant royal blue colour. Even like electric blue, I think it's called. Sort of like Miami or somewhere like that. So we want to create that sort of Caribbean-y sky. And by using a darker colour, what it does is it just frames the corners and just frames your painting. So just coming down, blending it into the previous tones. Don't worry if you get any streak marks, you can go over the top of this. Okay, so if you're like me and you have any burnt sienna shining through, what you can do is just dry your work with a hairdryer and just go over the top. Sometimes with acrylics, they do show the underpainting, they show the burnt sienna through it, and it can make your colours look a bit bland. So if you want to make it more vibrant, look, you can just add a second layer of paint. You do the exact same trick and just go over the top, and you can just make it more electric, more realistic. So same technique, we're just adding more blues. A quick trick, if you would like to, an easy way to do it, is by creating the really pastel blue at the bottom and then cleaning your brush and then creating the electric blue at the top, just the cerulean blue and cobalt blue. So if you use the really light tone for the very bottom, the base of the horizon, and just block in the very top with the really darker blue, what you can do is once it's all blocked in and you have a gap in between, you can bridge the two by just mixing the two mixes together. So all you do, look, you just mix the light horizon colour with the dark royal blue, and then just create X shapes and just blend the two shades together. So nice and easy. So if you have any horrible brush marks, any burnt sienna shining through, just go over the top. Whoops, I've got hair on my canvas. So any mistakes, don't worry. Acrylics dry extremely quick. If you are impatient like me, you can just use a hairdryer and just go over the top. And it's a really good way as well to smooth out your blending. So look, if your blending isn't so smooth, look, you can just go, look, there's a big gap, there's a big jump between the darker colours and the lighter colours. I can just go over the top and rework areas, just make it look a lot more smoother, a lot more vibrant by just adding a second coat of paint. So there we go, easy peasy. So now she's dry and we're really happy with her. All I'm going to do, I'm just going to get some cobalt blue and I'm just going to block in my tree again, and I'll put back the speed to normal speed. So I'm just using cobalt blue just to block in roughly where I want my tree to be. And we'll put the video back to normal speed. So I'm going to paint the very bottom of our canvas. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to create some lovely tropical sand. So places like the Caribbean or Miami or somewhere where you have this really nice tropical white beach sand, we're going to try to recreate that. So we're going to use white, a little dot of yellow and a little dot of purple. So predominantly white with a little bit of yellow and a dot of purple. And we're going to create really lovely sandy beaches. So imagine you want to go somewhere like the Caribbean, like Jamaica or Antigua or Bermuda, Bahamas. Like anywhere like that. We're trying to create that really nice sandy beach. So just block in the bottom of your painting. And what we'll do is we'll start working on the seawater. So we want to make tropical water. Now if you imagine the sea is really, really deep at far distance. So we're going to use darker blues to show deep water. And as the waves come towards you, the beach and the water obviously gets much more shallower. So you have these much more shallow. So just like we've done a sort of transition in our sky, we're going to do a transition in our water. So to create deep water, we're going to use cerulean blue and cobalt blue and a little bit of white. And we're going to create a nice royal blue again, but we're going to add a little bit of yellow to make it a little bit more turquoise. Now yellow is perfect with cobalt blue and a little bit of cerulean blue for making turquoise. So I'll teach you that later, but we've still got plenty of blue in our mix, so it's not going to be too turquoise. And we're going to block in right up to the horizon. Now the reason I'm not using tape just yet is sometimes when you use tape and you haven't got as thick paint as we do on this sky as we have in the bottom. If I use tape, sometimes you get a horrible big line from where the tape was stuck to your canvas, and when you remove it you get a big line across your painting. So to stop that, what I would recommend is you paint by hand, and then once we've got a thick even paint on our canvas, what we'll do is we'll use tape to just straighten everything up. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just blocking in roughly. It doesn't matter if it's not straight, we can use tape in a little minute. Because we've got this big layer of paint on our ocean, so again, if you have to go over it twice just to make it look a bit brighter, feel free to do so. So it's just the two blues, a little bit of yellow and some white, but more cobalt blue than anything. So this is going to be the deepest part of our ocean, so you think of far into the distance. So can you see, by just adding a second coat of paint sometimes, especially with acrylics, it just makes it look so much more vibrant. You get the actual colours that you want. And this is the same even on a white canvas. Sometimes you just have to give it 2 layers of paint if you want to get that really vibrant look. Okay, so we've done our really deep ocean water, so now we're going to get more shallow as we move towards the viewer and the bottom of the painting. So I'm going to teach you how to make turquoise. So I've got it pre-mixed, but you can make it at home. You can just do, you just use cerulean blue and a little bit of yellow. And you can add a little bit of cobalt blue to make it darker. But cerulean blue and yellow, you'll get a very greeny turquoise. And as I say, if you want to make it darker, you can just add more cobalt blue just to make it look deeper and cooler. And you can add white. So it's up to you what shade you want to go for. You can add more yellow to make it more greeny. You can add more white to make it look pastel. But I tend to use just cerulean blue and yellow and a little bit of white. And you should get this lovely turquoise colour, okay? And all we're going to do, just like we did with the sky, we're just going to gently merge the colours together. So we're trying to get it just like we've done with the sky, where we've got this lovely transition from the horizon going upwards. We want to do the same with the ocean. So we want to have it coming towards the viewer, and it looks like the tropical water is getting more shallow, more turquoise as it comes towards the beach. So easy peasy, there we go. So we're going to get more shadow, and we're going to use the same colour as the horizon. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, but predominantly white. So more white than anything. And all we're going to do is we're just going to mix the 2 tones together. So we don't want to jump from the horizon colour to the turquoise. So by mixing the two together, all we're doing, we're just creating a nice turquoise light pastel blue, and we're just merging them together. So it kind of should look, once it's starting to block in now, it's starting to take effect, where it's looking like it's fading off into the background with the sky, and the water, the colour is fading towards you. Now don't worry if you go over your wave, we can paint that back in just like we did with the tree. We just want to work on our blending. We just want to make all our transitions look nice and smooth. Nature's perfect for blending. You don't ever notice the transitions. So what we want to do, we just want to work on these transitions to try to get it look as smooth as we can. I always say the blocking in and the skies are the hardest bit. So all the blocking in, if you can get through this, you can do a good job. Adding the highlights and the detail over the top is the easy bit. It's this bit, trying to match colours and try to get it as realistic as possible. This is the hard bit. So look, we're just doing the X shapes, merging all the colours, nice and soft. Excellent, well done. So if you're happy with your blending, we can continue. If you've got a few streak marks or brush marks, you can always do the trick that we did with our sky and just go over the top and rework it. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix some wet sand. So the wet sand, if you imagine, is really shallow water and really dark sand. So we want to make it look darker than the lovely sort of tropical white sand. So what we're going to do, we're going to mix the horizon colour, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and lots of white, and the sand colour, which was yellow, a little bit of white, and a dot of purple. Now you can add a little bit more yellow and a little bit more purple, still plenty of white, but by just adding some of the horizon colour, what we're trying to do, we're just trying to create a darker shade to make it look like the sand is all wet and the shallow water and the sand is mixing together. So look, by adding a little bit more purple, purple is fantastic for cooling things down, to make things look either wet or in the shade. So by just creating a bit more yellow and purple together, you can kind of get a sort of pastel yellow ochre sort of colour. So it's still got plenty of white in it, and it's got some of that horizon colour. So all we're doing, we're just trying to block in this wet sand. So you imagine this is all the sand that the carpet of water sort of peels back and leaves all that sort of wet, shiny sand. So as I say, don't worry if it's scruffy, just try to block it in with your big brush. And then if you clean your brush or swap to a different brush, what we're going to do is get all the yellow off your brush, and we're going to use the pure horizon colour. So at the bottom, if you imagine all this shallow water, it's basically the same colour as the bottom of the sky. So if you imagine a big reflection, it's sort of reflecting down onto the water. So all we're doing, we're just gently merging it into the turquoise. So again, just try to work on your transitions. So all it is cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. Now, cause when I'm thinking these painting tutorials up in my imagination, sometimes when you draw an outline and stuff, it's not really perfect. Now I think that the wave is too far back, sorry. So I think we should bring it a bit forward. I think there's too much beach and not enough water. I think it looks a bit too far up the painting. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to paint over our wave, and I'm just going to bring it a bit lower so we can have a bit more water than we have beach. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just using the sky colour. So I'm just using that sky blue, a lovely pastel blue, and I'm just painting over our wave. So that is the fantastic thing about acrylic paints. They are perfect for beginners and intermediate artists because they are so easy. And as I say, if you do have anything dark like the wave which you use cobalt blue, you can always just dry it with a hairdryer and just paint over the top. So just if you do have some of the dark wave colour shining through, just dry it with a hairdryer and just go over the top and give it a second coat of paint and it will disappear. Just like magic. Look at that. So we've still got a little bit of wet sand, but we've just got a little bit more water, and I think it just looks a bit nicer. So I'm going to take some purple and yellow. So purple and yellow, a little bit of white. And I'm just going to make the wet sand a little bit darker. You can add a dot of brown if you choose to as well. You can add a dot of burnt umber. So purple, yellow, plenty of white, and a dot of brown. And we're just trying to make this wet sand. So now we've changed the bottom. I'm just going to change the wet sand just to match. Excellent. And again, I'm just putting some of the nicer, brighter sand, which was white, a little bit of yellow, and a dot of purple. So now we have successfully blocked in our painting. I know it's hard, I know it's time consuming, but the transitions make your life so much easier when we paint over the top, because they will create the realism. So all I've done now, I've measured a straight horizon. I have dried my painting before I have applied any painting tape. Please dry your painting. And what we're going to do, we're going to work on the sky first. We're going to create some clouds, and then we're going to work on the ocean and the tropical water. So first I'm going to teach you how to paint clouds. So I've got here my iPad, my lovely pink case that my daughter chose. And I've got a picture that I took of a field near me with this fantastic clouds. Now a lot of people ask me for reference photos, and what I tend to do is I steal clouds from one picture and I use waves from others, or I use my imagination. So what I thought to do, I thought how to teach you how to paint clouds using this cloud as a reference. So we're going to make a warm grey, this colour here, and we're going to do the shadow of our cloud first. So these are all the bits of cloud that have rainwater in it and don't have much sunlight. So we're going to get some black, we're going to add a bit of heat in some orange, and we're going to add some purple. So black, a little bit of orange, just give it a little bit of heat, some purple, and a tiny bit of cobalt blue just to make it a little bit more dark. So purple and blues are really good for cooling things down, and orange is good for warming it. And we're just going to add a little bit of white, and we're just going to make a lighter shade of this dark grey, okay? So we're just going to make a lighter shade. Now remember, acrylics always dry darker than you think. So what you put on your canvas, sometimes it dries a little shade darker. So you want plenty of white. We don't want to make it too dark, because if you use really dark colours, it will bring the clouds forward towards the foreground. And we want to have these clouds far back. So all I'm doing, I'm using a round-headed brush. I've got hardly any water on my brush. I've got plenty of paint, and I'm just smearing into the canvas little shapes. Now these are going to be sort of the bottom base of the cloud that's hardly getting any sunlight, and they can have a bit of rainwater, so they're all a bit dark. And I'm just trying to create texture. So I'm just trying to leave some gaps in the underpainting, and I'm just trying to create shapes of what I want the clouds to be. So I'm just creating little gaps. So just take your time. So I'm just trying to create the shapes of clouds. go. So I'll zoom in for you so you can get an easier look. And what we're going to do, we're going to create a middle colour now. So we're going to use cerulean blue, cobalt blue, white, and we're going to add it to our grey. And we're just going to make plenty of white to make a much softer, still a shadow colour, still dark, but nowhere near as dark as what we just made. And we're just going to block in our clouds. So what I tend to do is I just go around the outline of the dark areas and I just create the shapes of clouds. Now, as I say, if you've taken your own photos like I've done, it's really easy to just go out with your iPhone and just take photos of clouds. So the good thing is you can't get done for any copyright, it's your photo. And what you can do is just practice by taking pictures of clouds and then having a sketchbook and just trying to recreate them. So what I tend to do, as I say, is I mix and match photos. I take lots of photos and I take a wave from one, a cloud from another. So that's why I don't really have many reference photos for you guys at home, unfortunately. But what it does is you get the best of both worlds. You can combine wonderful skies with wonderful waves. So don't be shy to take photos of clouds and practice yourself and put them in your own paintings. That's what I do. So look, all we're doing, we're just trying to block it in. We're just trying to make a big rain cloud. So come in here past this tree. So I've got a little bit darker blue on the base of it and a bit more creamier blue on the top. So just adding a little bit of cerulean blue and cobalt blue together. A little bit of that grey. Some purple and orange and black, remember that grey. Just plenty of white. So you can either use grey or a dot of black just to make it a bit more earthy and dark. Just trying to create cloudy, wispy shapes. So we can have some here in the top corner, why not? So a lot of this we're going to cover over. We're going to have our palm tree. And we're going to have some leaves and things. But all these layers, it's like doing the transition, then doing the cloud, and then doing the waves. What we're doing, we're trying to put all these bits and bobs to create the realism. So look, what I tend to do, I tend to always go a bit diagonal for my clouds, and I just try to create floppy shapes with my brush. And I leave plenty of gaps in the underpainting so the blue shines through, and have little bits that break off from the clouds just to make it look nice and wispy. So I have little tiny bits, look, little tiny bits that are breaking off. So that you just load up your brush, just create shapes. You don't want it all matching, you want to create little bubbles. And don't be afraid, look, to just have little ones breaking off, just little splats. Just coming off at a slight diagonal. And then all we're doing now, we're just getting pure titanium white, and while it's wet, the white will absorb some of this colour. We're just going to gently go around the edges of our cloud. Now I'm going to have the light coming from the left hand side. So if you imagine the light source is coming from the left, I'm just going to have the white sort of coming down this highlights to emphasize the light coming from the left hand side. So while it's all wet, I'm just gradually blending in. It will dry very flat because the white will absorb some of the blue underneath. And we'll go over it later and we'll highlight it. But all I want to do is on the sort of top edges of these clouds, I want it to make it look like the light is shining down on them. So all I'm doing here is on the left hand side of the clouds, I'm just using pure titanium white. So if you can see, it's just on the left hand side of each cloud. I'm still leaving plenty of the underpainting of the lighter blue that we just used, and just on the left hand sides I'm just trying to create the illusion of highlights. So look, on the left hand side, each cloud, just making it look like it's sparkling with the sunlight. And as your painting dries, you can just add more pure white and just go over the top, just to emphasize all the highlights. So as I say, with acrylics they dry very flat, so if you're struggling to get the sort of vibrancy of the white, just dry your work and then just go over the top with more thick white paint. Don't use any water, just take the paint straight out the tube and just go over the top, and you can make your highlights a lot more vibrant. So I'm just using pure white. I've got a dry brush, got no water whatsoever, really thick paint. I'm just outlining the cloud. I'm gently pushing it into the previous light blue, just so again the transition is nice and smooth. As I say, look, you can have loads just coming off it with pure white to create shapes and dots. And look, on this side, I'm just going to, on the left, just highlight the left with pure white, but I won't touch the right hand side. And it should, once my hand gets out of the way, just make it look like it's got a highlight, like the sun is shining on one side of it. And when we do that with the tree, it will all match, you see. Because what we'll do is we'll match all the sunlight on the trunk and on the palm leaves, and it will all come together at the end. It will look really realistic. So as I say, look, just take your time. If you want to make your highlights more vibrant, you can just go over the top. All I'm doing, look, I'm just leaving gaps in the darker colour, and I'm just creating the illusion of texture in my clouds. So look, I'm just leaving some gaps. I'm just putting some highlights on the top just to make them look extra fluffy, like they've got texture. So all this doesn't look great when you're zoomed in, you know, like it doesn't look for anything special. But if you take a step back and you see the painting from afar, it gives it real good realism. And as I say, it's not anything to do with detail, it's just by learning colours and tones. So it's perfect for beginners. So there we go, look, it's all starting to come alive. So cools are things like purples, blues, and blacks and browns. So if you use a little bit of cobalt blue and a little bit of purple and some white, so if I zoom in for you, so purple, cobalt blue, a little bit of cerulean blue and some white. You can add a tiny bit of black, just a dot of black, just literally a pinprick. And we're just going to make this really nice cool shadow tone. And we're just going to make some shadows on the base of our cloud. So again, it's just creating the illusion of texture. There's no detail. But we still want to make it nice and pastel. That's why it's got plenty of white in it, because we want to keep it far back. Now what you can do is you can use the sky colour. So you can use either the royal blue or the horizon colour that we've mixed, or an in-between. And you can poke holes between your clouds to make them look more realistic. So this is a really easy trick. You might have seen this when we're painting the forest landscapes, where we poke holes between the tree branches and leaves to make it look like light is coming through. Well, you can do that with clouds. So what you can do, if your clouds are too big or they're in a weird shape, you can use the sky colour to poke holes in them and just make them look different. So say there's no mistakes. If you ever make a mistake or you don't like something, just take a step back, just see what you want to change, dry your work, mix the colour and just fix it. So all I'm doing, I'm just adding a bit more sky and just making my clouds look a bit more realistic. Just putting in some gaps in between the sky and the clouds, just some holes. And even the colour of the sky, look, if you do a too dark a colour, you can always lighten it up later. Acrylics dry so quick, you can just dry it and paint over it, lighten areas, darken areas. So just blend in some of the sky in. So that is looking cool. Look, I'm just going to make it lighter. It's a bit too dark. I used a bit too much royal blue. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of the horizon colour. So look, if you want to make it darker, you just add more cerulean blue and more cobalt blue. And if you want to make it lighter, you just add more white. And then now it's super funky and it looks super cool. You can just go back, and while it's now dry, you can do the white trick. And as I say, just add a lot more thick white over the top, especially on the left hand side of each of your clouds. We can add some dots, little floaters, little bits coming off each cloud. So a lot of painting with acrylic paints is just taking your time, letting it dry, and then just seeing where you need to make areas more vibrant and bright, seeing where you need to make areas more cool. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just trying to outline the clouds. Certain areas I'm trying to make brighter. So all this cloud could be getting loads of sunlight on the top of it, and that's why it's so bright and white. I don't want to make the clouds too rainy because obviously it's meant to be a holiday scene. We were meant to be chilled, relaxed, some Bob Marley playing, a cocktail in hand. We want to be nice and cool and relaxed. We don't want some mean old rain cloud. So look, just going over the top just to make the highlights more vibrant. Leave plenty of the light blue underneath just to shine through, and it makes it look more wispy, you see. So we can have loads of little ones breaking off. Again, just trying to put some texture. What I think I'm going to do, I'm just going to outline it with some white, just to take the harshness of the dark colour off from the base. So just almost glazing it. I've got hardly any paint on my brush. Brush is dry. I'm just going around areas, just lighting it up with the white. So you can use lighter colours just to go over the top of your dark shadows and just make them not so harsh, and again it just pushes it back. So that's looking fantastic. So what we're going to do, while we've got our tape, we're going to go right down to the horizon and we're just going to block in and just make our horizon nice and smooth and straight. Go right up to the ridge of the tape, and now we've blocked it all in. We shouldn't get a horrible ridge or anything when we remove the tape because we've got plenty of paint on our canvas. It's nice and flat. So look, just go right up to the ridge, and then we'll remove our tape and we'll start working on our tropical water. So I'm going to remove our tape. So as I say, don't worry if it's a bit wonky or anything. We'll straighten up our water now. The main thing is to measure it and get a nice straight horizon. So just dry your work before obviously applying any painting tape, please. And where you've just painted, we're just going to go over the top and we're just going to straighten up our ocean. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to mix some of that dark colour that we used previously, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, a little bit of yellow and a tiny bit of white. And I'm going to go right up to the tape. And I'm just going to make our horizon nice and straight. So imagine you're looking out into the horizon. You don't want a wonky horizon. As I say, I know my easel's very crooked, but I assure you that my tape and everything is measured and this horizon is perfectly straight. So look, just go right up to the tape and then you'll get a lovely straight horizon. Now what you can do is what I do all the time is I use chalk on my acrylic painting to see where I want things to be. So where the water meets the sand and you get that lovely sort of sea foam and you get that sort of nice white edge, I'm just using chalk just to sort of measure in where I want things to be. Now I want to put a wave because our water is gorgeous and we've got this lovely transition, but it's a bit boring. So what you can do is you can just use chalk to create where you want to put in the line. So all I've done, I've just drawn a rough line across the canvas. It doesn't have to be straight or anything because we're going to make it quite bobbly for our water. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a wave, some wash. So we're going to mix blue and brown, a little bit of purple and some white. So blue, brown, a little bit of purple and some white. And we're going to make this sort of pastel sort of shadow colour. And all we're going to do, just where the chalk is, we're just going to make it deliberately bobbly. We're not going to have it perfectly straight because if you imagine this is sort of the water coming towards the beach. So we don't want it dead straight. We want it a little bit wonky. And this is the dark colour. So we're putting on the shadows first of the wave and all the wash. And then we'll put the highlights over the top. So we're just creating this nice dark shadow and then we'll add the highlights and the texture over the top. So there we go. So if I zoom in for you, so we're going to get some cerulean blue and cobalt blue and white to create the horizon colour. It's the same colour as the horizon, and all I'm going to do with a small brush, I'm just going to leave gaps in the underpainting to shine through. So I've just got gaps and I'm just putting some highlights on it. And all I'm doing is just trying to create the illusion of ocean sea spray or wash, sort of a wave. So if you want to learn how to paint a wave, it's much easier if you put the shadow on first and then you just put the highlights on the top. So look, I'm leaving little gaps. Look, see, little gaps. And that dark colour that we've just put on, it just makes it look more 3D. So by just leaving the colour, the dark colour to have little gaps, it just gives it more texture. It just looks like certain areas are in the shadows to create a wave or wash. So a super easy way on how to paint a wave. So just load up your brush. Leave plenty of gaps. Just try to create some of the illusion of texture. We'll just do it all the way across. So if we've done it on the left, we'll just match it on the right. To say, don't worry about your tree, we'll block that in. We'll do all the detail on the tree in a minute. Excellent. So I'm going to get some blue and I'm going to get some of the turquoise. I'm just going to mix the two together. So cobalt blue and turquoise, a little bit of white. I'm just going to create another shadow colour, but this time a bit more blue and turquoise. And I'm just going to put in some waves. So all I'm doing, I'm using a flat brush and I'm just putting some lines, and I'm using this really nice pastel bluey turquoise colour because I don't want to make it too dark and bring it really close. And then now I know where I want this edge to be, and everything's starting to look cool. I'm just using the horizon colour, so cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white, and I'm just going to paint in over my chalk this lovely little edge. So we're just trying to give it quite a thick edge. So if you imagine this is all the foam, and we're going to teach you how to paint sea foam. So I've added a tiny bit of white to the mix. So it's cerulean blue, cobalt blue, but predominantly white, so a lot more white than anything. And all I've done, I've got a fine liner, and I'm just creating an edge, just going over the top of that light blue that we just painted in. And we're going to create zigzags, and we're going to create sea foam. So we're going to make our tropical water. Now we've got this nice thick edge. We're just going to make it look a lot more prettier. A lot more realistic. So it's easy to paint water. As I say, you don't have to be an expert in it. It's really just taking your time and trying to do the transitions in the underpainting that we've done, and then just adding the detail over the top to make it look 3D. So what we're going to do, look, watch, we're going to create zigzags. So all I'm going to do is create shapes. So I'm just using a really thin brush. And I'm just creating sort of the letter Z sort of shapes. I'm just creating a little zigzag, look. So almost like electricity or something. And all I'm doing, I'm leaving gaps in the underpainting. And these are all the sort of wash and bubbles you get where the water is really shallow. And you get all this sort of sea foam. So I'm just coming out a little bit diagonally, just at a slight angle, and some of them I'm joining up to that nice thick edge. So when it comes up to the edge, look, I'm just joining it up, and again it's just to create the realism. So say it's not hard at all, anyone can learn this. Perfect for beginners. Because we've done one side, we're going to do the other side. So look, all we're doing, creating these zigzags, just all different shapes. Some of them we're joining up to that nice frothy edge. So look, some of them we're going to join up, some of them we're not. We're just trying to make them just like the clouds, just very random. We're trying not to make them all look the same. So just try to do all different patterns and shapes. So just go some to the edge that join up. And our beach is starting to take effect. This beach painting is looking awesome. So there we go. How easy was that? And then what we're going to do is just in the middle of our waves, just like we did with the clouds, we're just going to add some pure white now. Now that it's dry, we're just going to put some highlights just in the middle of the wave. Because I want the viewer to focus down the middle. So by making the middle part a little bit brighter than the edges, I just want them to look straight down. So imagine you're sitting on this beach, drinking a pina colada, listening to some tunes with your sunglasses on. We want them to focus looking out into the ocean. And now this is all dry. So as you can see, look, we added quite a lot of white, but the blue sucks it all up. So if you want to make your highlights brighter, you just have to sometimes go over them once or twice with acrylics. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just going over the top and I'm gradually letting it fade out into the blue. So the middle, again, is right in the center. Just letting it fade out, let the paint run out, look. So the focus is in the middle. Excellent. And I'm just going to get some pure white. And where we've got that sort of light horizon colour, I'm just going to put some highlights over the top and just add some bubbles and dots. Just again to make it look more realistic. So again, just take your time. Just on some of the areas, try to join it up to the end where it joins onto the beach. So just do zigzags and little dots. Just join up here onto this nice thick edge. So it's the same technique. Just having patience and discipline to be able to concentrate and go on. Now I don't live anywhere near a tropical beach, so I'm just doing this out of my imagination. Don't get too many tropical beaches in South London. But again, you could always use a reference photo if you find it easier. So can you see now it's the nice transition underneath, and now we're putting the highlights and the detail on. That's what's tricking your eyes. So just like the far away sky, we've got the lovely transition and you've got the detail of the clouds. Now everything's starting to come together. Talking about the clouds, I'm just going to add some more little highlights. So as I say, it's just like the water. While certain areas are drying, you can always leave them to dry and then work on the other areas. So this I'm just going to go over with the white again, just make it brighter, make some of these clouds a little bit brighter. And you can do the same with your waves. So leave it to dry, work on one area of your painting, and then come back and just make your highlights a little bit more vibrant. So don't be afraid to go back and forth with your painting. So what you can do as well, same trick, you can use some turquoise and plenty of white to make a really pastel turquoise. So turquoise and plenty of white. Use your fine liner and you can add some highlights in the water, just joining up to the wave as well. So same technique, you can just join a few up to your previous highlights. You just give it sort of texturize. Just look like ripples and light shining in the water. So they're really noticeable close up, but if you take a step back you won't notice them hardly. So what we're going to do now, we're going to mix a shadow colour to go under our wave, so as the water comes up onto the beach. So we're going to use brown, lots of cobalt blue and white. So a little bit of burnt umber, lots of white, some cobalt blue and a dot of purple. So cobalt blue, white, brown and a dot of purple. And all we're going to do, we're just going to use a fine liner. So you can either use a fine liner or a really thin brush or even a flat brush. And all we want to do is just outline our nice wave. So this is just the shadow as the water comes up onto the beach. We're just trying to create a shadow underneath it just to give it a 3D effect. We don't want to use too dark a colour, we don't want to use something like black because it will just make it look a bit too cartoony. So by having plenty of white and blue and brown in it, we've just got a nice subtle shadow tone. So just take your time, try to have a steady hand and just outline your wave. And you can even put little divots and ridges in it, so you don't have to have it flat, you can have it all curved, give it some shape. So again, all this just adds to the realism. So perfect. And then we're just going to use that colour just underneath this wave, again just to make it look a bit darker. So same technique, we're just going underneath it and just creating the illusion of shadow. So now we've done the shadow underneath our wave, we're just going to finish this area and then we're going to mix another colour. So we're going to mix some brown and yellow into our mix that we just created. So we're going to have brown and yellow. And we should get this really sort of dark sort of yellow ochre. And all we're going to do is we're just going to glaze underneath our wave. So we're just trying to create, again, just a little bit of a shadow. But just gently, we've got a dry brush. Got hardly any of the paint. We're just sort of colouring in an area underneath it. So we're just trying to create a really subtle, darker shadow, but really, really soft. So I'm just gently blending it into the canvas. So again, it's just to create the illusion of a shadow underneath our wave. So it's really subtle. And then just like the highlights, as I say, if you want to make an area brighter, you can go over it again. You can also make an area darker. So this area is dried now, it's not as dark as I wanted. So I'm just going over it in the same colour. I'm just going to outline a wave. Now we smoothed that area. It's kind of gone over my outline. So I'm just putting it back just as a clear definition between the sand and the ocean water. So as I say, it's just going back and forth. If you've worked on an area, just put things back. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to do our palm tree. So I'm going to teach you how to paint a super realistic palm tree. So we're going to mix blue and brown. So cobalt blue and burnt umber. A tiny bit of purple, but predominantly cobalt blue and burnt umber. And all we're going to do is we're going to paint over our tree trunk that we had in cobalt blue with a much darker shadow tone. So if you imagine our sky is nice and pushed back, our water's coming towards the viewer, so our tropical water is coming towards the beach. So now we're going to create a beautiful palm tree. So first we're going to put the shadow colour on first. So all I'm doing, I'm just going over the top of that cobalt blue. I'm using a really dark colour to bring it really close towards the viewer. So there we go. So when you're happy with it and you've blocked it in, please dry your work. So dry your tree trunk, so the dark colour that you've just blocked in, once you finish, is completely dry, and we'll start putting some highlights and detail over the top. So this is nice and dry now. Here's one I made earlier. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take some yellow and I'm going to take some purple. So I'm going to mix the cool purple and a little bit of yellow. I'm going to create a really dark goldy colour. Add a little bit of white, just a tad of white. And I'm going to go down the right hand edge of it, and I'm just going to outline the tree on the right hand side. Okay, so I'm using a flat headed brush, and all I'm doing, I'm going down and outlining the edge of the tree trunk. So if you imagine this side of the tree isn't getting as much sunlight because we're going to have the sunlight coming from the left, but it's still getting some, and I'm going to turn the brush sideways now. So look, I'm just going to, got a dry brush, I'm just going to load up my paint, I'm going to turn it sideways, and I'm just going to put some knocks in the bark. So if you imagine a coconut tree, like a palm tree, we're just going to create some knocks. And what you can do, look, if you just push downwards, so if you just drag the brush downwards, you can gently blend in that outline, and because the dark brown that we've just created is dry, you're not getting a mucky colour, you're getting a perfect bright highlight. So look, I'm just dragging it down, I'm just trying to make that outline look less harsh. I'm just trying to blend it in just by going downwards, and then I'm just going across and creating these little knocks in the bark to add a little bit of texture. And look at that already, look, just blending it, it's already starting to look 3D. So we're going to take the horizon colour, which was blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, lots and lots of white, and we're going to add a dot of burnt umber to it. So we're just going to add a dot of burnt umber. I'm going to wipe away most of the paint, and we're going to do the sunlight on the left hand side. So we're going to do the exact same trick. We're going to outline the left hand side. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just outlining the left hand side of my tree. So this side of the tree is getting much more sunlight. So I'm just outlining it. And then all I'm going to do is create knocks in the bark going the other way. So look, just curl them round. You give them a slight curl, just look like a coconut tree. But we're leaving plenty of that dark undercolour in the middle to give it the shadow. And then again, look, we're just going to go downwards with the brush. You can wipe away most of the paint, so you just get, look, like a chalk. If you've wiped off most of the paint, you just get sort of chalk. And you can just push downwards on your canvas and just make that harsh edge a lot less harsh. Just smooth it in, look, just blending it. And there you go, a 3D tree in 2 minutes. Look how quick that was. So we're going to do the palm leaves now. So we're going to mix blue and purple and burnt umber. So cobalt blue, purple and burnt umber. We're still going to use a flat brush, and we're just going to create diagonal lines. So we're going to create really sharp diagonal lines, and these are going to be our palm leaves. So we're going to just come down. So all I'm doing, I'm making them quite thick. I'm just coming down at an angle. So again, just like we did with the bark of the tree, we're going to put the shadows on first, and then we're going to put the highlights on the top. So all I'm doing is just creating really like elongated triangles coming down at an angle. And we're going to do one big stem. So we're just going to come down, look, watch, big stem. This is going to be our branch. So if you do a really big stem first, and then we're just going to come out diagonally afterwards to create the palm leaves. So if you draw your stem like a nice curve, and then just come out diagonally. So watch, one. So just come out like this diagonally, and we'll just create the leaves. And the brush does all the work. So if you have a flat brush, it will do all the work for you. So just come down diagonally. So there we go. And then we're just going to load up my brush with the same colour paint. Excuse the light, it's me walking in front of it. And then we're just going to do the same. So we're going to just come diagonally. If you have to go over them once or twice just to make them darker, don't worry. And we're just going to come diagonally in the opposite direction. So look, we're just coming in the opposite direction. So exactly the same trick, look, but in the opposite direction. And that will give it the 3D effect of the palm leaf. So it's really easy. Look. And then just like we did on the left hand side, where we've got some hanging into the frame of the painting, we're just going to do that just here in the foreground. So these could be the corner of odd leaves just coming down. And again, it just makes it all real. So I'm just loading up my brush. We're just going to come down. There we go. So while that's drying, let's get some blue and turquoise, and let's create another wave. So while our palm tree is drying, let's get blue and turquoise. So cobalt blue and some turquoise. And we'll just put in another wave. Why not? We'll make this a masterpiece. So we're going to make quite a thick line. So just like we did with our palm leaves, we're just going to use a flat brush, and we're just going to make it really thick. And this is going to be the shadow of our wave. So this is going to be sort of the barrel of the wave. So all I'm doing is just creating a really thick barrel shape across the page, across the canvas, excuse me. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get some turquoise, and we're just going to put it through the middle. So we've got a blue outline either side of it. So I'm just using pure turquoise, and we're just going to have a dark blue edge. And then we're going to get some purple and brown. So purple and brown, a little bit of cobalt blue, tiny bit of cerulean blue, and some white. And we're just going to create a shadow for our waves, just like we did in the foreground here. So we're going to have some barreling over. So we're just going to have a dark shadow first. So all I'm doing, I'm just trying to create the illusion of a wave. So I'm just sort of where it barrels over. But I don't want to make it too detailed because it's far off in the background. And then all we're going to do, now we've got the dark shadow colour, we're just going to add plenty of white to that mix. And a little bit of cobalt blue. So plenty of white. Just so we create a really cool blue now. And we're just going to add some of the sea foam. So we're just going to add some of the wave itself, or the froth. We're just going to blend it into that dark colour. So the same over here. Excellent. And then we're just going to get some pure titanium white, and all we're going to do is just go over the top. So just on the top. As I say, the white will suck up a lot of the colour that we've just put in, and it will dry quite flat, so we can always go over the top and just make it a bit more vibrant in a minute. It looks very vibrant there, but I assure you once it dries it will absorb a lot of the blue. So look, we'll do the same on this side. So we're just adding some highlights over the top just to create the illusion of the wave. This is making me want to go on holiday. So if I zoom in for you, you can see it a little bit clearer. Now we're just going to get some blue and turquoise. I'm just going to swap over to my flat brush, and I'm just going to outline it. So I'm just, where we've blocked in our wave there, we've painted a bit over the outline, so I'm just going back over it. So just like we did with the sand and the beach, I'm just now going over the top of some of the waves just to make them look a bit more prominent. So as I say, just take your time with each stage. If you rework an area, just have the confidence to go back, don't rush. So look, just putting some ridges in. You can even outline this part of the wave. Just give it a little bit more shadow. So we're just trying to make it all look a bit more 3D. So look, just give it a nice clear ridge. So this bright turquoisey blue, it's just dark enough that you notice it, but we don't want to have it too dark that it brings it really far forward. So there we go, we're going to go all the way across the canvas. Perfect. So that's looking fantastic. Our tree branches, our palm leaves should be nice and dry. So just before we do it, we're just going to outline this area here. Just with a little bit of brown and blue. So cobalt blue and burnt umber. A tiny bit of white. Just so it's not as harsh as the one in the foreground. I'm just using my flat brush. I'm just going under the edge. So I'm just making it a little bit darker. Seeing we've made the wave in the background a little bit darker, I'm just making this one a little bit darker just to bring it forward. So this is looking amazing. And this one, I'm just going to make a tiny shade darker just to bring this a little bit more forward. So as I was saying, if you're doing a correction, you can just correct areas. You want to have your darkest darks in the foreground, so the closer to you, the darker they are. And to push something back, you want to have them more blue. So if you've watched the previous tutorials, we always make the faraway mountains and things nice and blue. So cobalt blue is really, really good for that. So all I'm doing, I'm just using this flat edge of my brush just to outline this area and make it a lot more dark. Same here. Just going to go under the bottom of it with a fine liner. Just make it a little bit darker. Just to give it some definition. I'm just going to get some bright white now she's dry. Just put some highlights on the top. And then because we've done it on one side, we're just going to match it on the other side. So you can see even how we just added white a minute ago, but it's dried. It looks more blue just because that white will absorb the colour underneath. So that's what I'm saying. Sometimes you just got to go over it twice. Sometimes even 3 times. If you want to make your highlights really vibrant. So there we go. Just create some sea froth. And she's starting to look really 3D now. So we've got this light coming from the left, and we've got that on the trunk, and we've got that on the cloud. So we're going to make the same on our branches. So I'm going to mix this really nice green, which is called chromium oxide green. You can use sap green if you want. And I've just added a tiny bit of cobalt blue, just a tiny bit. And I'm just going to go on the left hand side of all these branches in this bright green. So you can't see it much because of the dark colour underneath, but it's just a nice green, and because it's got a little hint of cobalt blue in it, it's still quite dark. And all I'm doing is just going over the nice palm leaves. So if I zoom in so you can see it now, so you can see it's got bright green on the left hand side of all these palm leaves. So all I'm doing, I'm just colouring them in basically. Now we've got the shadow colour. I'm just using bright green over the top. And look, if your painting's dry, if you make a mistake like me, look, you can just use a baby wipe. If you've missed or you just make a boo-boo, you can just go over the top. So that's why I said if you have a hairdryer handy, if you're nervous about painting your palm leaves or anything over the top, just dry your painting at each stage, and if you make a mistake you can just wipe it away and then you can carry on. So I'm just going to colour these leaves in, make them nice and sharp. So the same with these ones here, peeking through. So I'm just trying to make them nice and thick and vibrant. So if the light is coming from the left hand side, we're just going to mix some yellow and this chromium oxide green together. So cad yellow and the green. And we're going to create a lime green, which is going to add a tiny bit of white to it. And we should get sort of the colour of a bright olive or a bright lime. And all we're going to do is on the left hand side of each leaf, we're going to come down with our flat brush and we're just going to create some highlights. So look, on the left hand side of each of the leaves, we're just going to come down and we're just going to create some highlights. So can you see already, just by creating some highlights on the left and having a dark shade on the right, it makes them look 3D. So just like we did with our lovely trunk, we're just going to come down on the left hand side, have the darker shade on the right, and that should look like they're 3D. So some are getting the light, some are getting the shadows. I'm just going on the left, and some are going to go on the right, why not? So you can go over the top just to make it more vibrant, just like all the other areas of the painting. And then what we're going to do, we're just going to get some pure white now. So look, we've got this green, and then we've got the yellow and green. And lastly, we're just going to get pure white. We're just going to use the sharp edge of our flat brush. And just on the left hand side, we're just going to outline our palm leaves and give them a really sharp edge to make them look like they're in the sunlight, and again make them look 3D. So just come down diagonally, just outline your leaves. If you come down really sharply, you can also get a really nice point on each leaf just to make them look more elongated. So we've got this really nice sunlight coming from the left. So what we're going to do, we're going to create some shadow coming from the right. So we're just going to mix green and blue together, cobalt blue and the chromium oxide green. So mix the two together. And all we're going to do, we're just going to make the edges of our branches a little bit more sharper and just the underneath a bit more in the shade. So we're just going to come down and just make the branches just really sharp and long. It's a bit spindly. So just come right down and just make the edges really sharp. And it just looks like the leaf is just really nice and spindly. So look, just come right down and give them a really sharp edge. So there we go. Super easy. You can even make the right hand side ones just a little bit darker. I'm just going to make the middle really long. So look, just using that really sharp edge of the brush, I'm just going to make it really long, drooping down. Some of the edges of some of the branches could be all breaking, so the leaves get old. Look at that. So same on this side, just going to make them really long. Same with these ones. So now if I zoom out, look how realistic that looks. It looks super realistic. You've got this lovely shading here on the trunk. You've got a lovely shading on the leaves. I'm just going to clean my brush. I'm just going to put a bit of titanium white just on the tip here of this tree trunk. So just to match the sunlight on the leaves, just so it looks like a really harsh edge. So I'm just putting some titanium white there. Just smoothing it with my finger. But our tree looks hyper realistic. It only took a few minutes. Really, really easy. Now we've got all this sort of detail. What we're going to do, we're just going to finish her off. We're just going to work on slight details. So just little things like where we've done things like the palm leaves coming down. We've just made them a bit sloppy. So what you can do, just like we poked holes in the sky, you can use things like the white of the clouds and you can just go round your leaves. So if you've got any rough edges, just sometimes with the canvas you get some rough edges, you can just go in between and you can just use the colours of the sky or the clouds and you can just make your clouds look more sharp and pop. So just spending 2-3 minutes going around and just adding extra detail. These are the little things that make your painting look that wow factor. So I'm just using pure titanium white now, no water, straight from the tube, really thick paint. And all I'm doing is outlining all these clouds, making them super vibrant. So just adding all the finishing detail. So all I'm doing, I'm just trying to create splodges, little floater clouds that are breaking off. And because the white is so sharp, it just gives it that really sort of realism. I'm just going to put a few just above the horizon. I think the horizon's just a bit boring. So I'm just getting some of this white. Just having some breakaway. I feel like I could be sitting in a hammock just looking out into the ocean. That would be so nice. It's a great thing about an artist. You can just take yourself away to anything you can create. So just where where the acrylics have dried a bit flat, I'm just going around this edge. I just want a clear edge between the cloud and that light pastel blue horizon. So again, just by going over the top, you can just make your highlights just look a little bit brighter. So just reworking areas. Just going to make this cloud a little bit more elongated. It was a bit of a big splat, so let's just spread that paint out a little bit and make little clouds. Add some more highlights, just again with the light coming from the left hand side. Just put some more highlights in between the leaves. So just these little finishing touches. But this is a beautiful tropical beach, if I do say so myself. And then again, just putting some pure titanium white just here on our waves. Just to make it look a bit more striking. And then just coming up to the tree trunk, just going to make these highlights just a little bit more bright. Let's have some little floater ones coming off here, why not? And then just to finish up, I'm just going to get some brown and I'm just going to use a fine line. I'm just going to put some dots in the sand, and these could be little pebbles or little divots in the sand, just on our nice tropical sand. So again, it's just to add some detail to our tropical beach. And last but not least, I'm just using some of the horizon colour, and I've just got a dry brush and I'm just pushing this cloud back, just glazing over the top, just making it a little bit softer and wispier. And I think she's finished. So you've learned how to paint a gorgeous tropical beach. So you've learned how to do a lovely transition in your sky where it's darker corners and you gradually get lighter to the horizon. You've learned how to paint clouds, how to paint realistic clouds. You've learned how to paint a palm tree, how to paint waves, have deep ocean water and shallow nearer water. You've learned how to paint waves, how to paint this tropical water and all the sea foam. We've got our shadow on our beach and our gorgeous palm trees. You've learned how to paint a palm tree, how to paint a trunk, how to paint the leaves. So thank you so much for watching this acrylic painting tutorial for tropical beach. My name is Murray. We have plenty of landscape painting tutorials here on my channel, M Stewart Paintings. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done already, because it really helps other artists see the videos and learn. And thank you so much for painting along with me. Take care. See you soon. Bye.